Close your eyes for a moment, just for a few seconds if you are willing. Let the weight of the day settle into the mattress beneath you and feel the quiet of the room. There is no rush here, no urgent news, no need to stay alert. This is a time for drifting, for letting your mind wander through the soft corners of history. And tonight, we are going to wander very far indeed. We are going to a place that is often forgotten, though it once held the entire known world in its palm. We are going to the Persian Empire, the forgotten superpower of the ancient world. But do not worry. There will be no loud trumpets, no dramatic announcements. Just a gentle story told as though we were sitting together in a quiet room, watching the dust motes float in the last light of evening. Let us begin with a simple image: a road. Not just any road, but the royal road of the Persian Empire, stretching some 1,500 miles from the city of Susa in the east all the way to the Aegean Sea in the west. It was a road built not for glory, but for connection. Along it, riders on horseback carried messages and news, stopping at stations spaced a day's ride apart, where fresh horses waited. They could cross the entire length of the empire in about 9 days. Think of that. In a world without telephones, without internet, without any technology beyond a good horse and a sturdy pair of legs, information could travel from one end of a vast empire to another in just over a week. That was faster than any other system of its time, faster than anything in the Mediterranean, faster than anything in India. The Persians understood that an empire is not built solely on walls and armies. It is built on communication, on the quiet, steady flow of messages and goods and people. And so they built a road, and along it, they built a kind of peace. The Persian Empire was, at its height, the largest empire the world had ever seen. It stretched from the Indus River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, from the Caspian Sea in the north to the Persian Gulf in the south. It included lands that today we call Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Syria, Jordan, Israel, Egypt, parts of Greece, parts of Afghanistan, and much more. Its center was a region we now call Iran, but which the Persians themselves called Parsa or Persia. Their kings were called the King of Kings, a title that echoed through the ages, a reminder that they ruled not just one kingdom but a collection of kingdoms, each with its own customs and languages and gods. And here is the remarkable thing: the Persians did not crush those differences. They allowed them to flourish. They understood that an empire of many peoples could be stronger than an empire of one people, if only you gave each group the freedom to live as they wished, so long as they paid their taxes and did not rebel. It was a kind of tolerant authoritarianism, if you can imagine such a thing. The king held absolute power, but he did not use that power to force everyone to speak the same language or worship the same God. He used it to maintain order, to ensure that the roads were safe, that the markets functioned, that the laws were fair. And for the most part, it worked. The founder of this great empire was a man named Cyrus II, known to history as Cyrus the Great. He was born sometime around 600 BC in a region that was then part of a larger kingdom called Media. The Medes were the dominant power in the area, but Cyrus was a Persian, a member of a smaller, less prominent tribe. And yet, he led a rebellion against the Medes around 550 BC, defeated them, and took their capital city of Ecbatana. From there, he began a series of conquests that would reshape the ancient world. He conquered the wealthy kingdom of Lydia, which was famous for its gold, and its king, Croesus, whose name became a byword for wealth. He conquered the cities of the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, including the great trading city of Babylon. And he did all of this with a surprising amount of mercy. When he took Babylon, he did not destroy its temples or slaughter its people. He allowed the Babylonians to continue their daily lives. He even allowed the Jews, who had been held captive in Babylon by the previous empire, to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. This act is recorded in the Bible, in the book of Ezra, where Cyrus is described as a king moved by God. It is a rare moment in ancient history where a conqueror is remembered not for his cruelty, but for his kindness. And yet, the Persian Empire is often forgotten. When we think of the ancient world, we think of Greece and Rome, of Athens and Sparta, of Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. We think of the pyramids of Egypt and the hanging gardens of Babylon. But the Persians, who built an empire that dwarfed all others, who created a system of government that influenced everyone who came after, who invented postal services and standardized weights and measures, and a legal code that treated all subjects equally under the law, they are often reduced to a footnote, a vague villain in the story of the Greek city-states, the enemy that the Greeks defeated at Marathon and Salamis. But that is a narrow view, a view shaped by the Greek historians who wrote the histories that survived. The Persians had their own stories, their own chronicles, but most of them have been lost. The clay tablets that held their records have crumbled or been buried, and what remains is fragments, echoes, whispers from a distant past. Let us imagine, then, what it might have been like to live in the Persian Empire at its height, around 500 BC. You might be a farmer in the fertile valley of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, land that had been cultivated for thousands of years. You would wake at dawn, as the sun rose over the flat plains, and you would go to work in your fields, tending to wheat and barley, dates and grapes. The air would be dry and warm, and the only sounds would be the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds. You would pay your taxes, not in gold but in grain and livestock, and a government official would come by occasionally to check the records. The presence of the empire would be felt, but gently. There were soldiers on the roads, but they were not there to harass you. They were there to keep the roads safe from bandits. There were judges in the cities, and you could appeal to them if you had a dispute. The empire was a vast machine, and you were a small but important part of it. Or perhaps you were a merchant, traveling along the royal road from Susa to Sardis. You would load your goods onto a camel or a donkey, a bundle of silk or spices or precious stones, and you would join a caravan of other travelers. The journey would take months, but it was safe. The Persians had built fortresses and patrols along the entire route. There were inns where you could rest, markets where you could trade. You might meet people from all over the empire, Egyptians with their flowing linen robes, Babylonians with their intricate beards, Greeks with their philosophies, Indians with their spices. You would hear languages you could not understand, see gods you had never heard of, taste foods you could not name. And yet, you would all be part of the same empire, a vast mosaic of cultures held together by the will of a single king. The king himself, the king of kings, lived in a series of grand palaces. The most famous was at Persepolis, a city built on a massive terrace in the mountains of southern Iran. The Persians called it Parsa, and it was a ceremonial capital, a place where the king would receive tribute from the provinces, where he would hold festivals and celebrations. The buildings were enormous, with columns that rose 60 feet high, covered in carvings of lions and bulls and mythical creatures. The walls were adorned with reliefs showing delegates from every part of the empire, each wearing their distinctive clothing, each bringing their gifts: a lion from Africa, a horse from Central Asia, a jar of perfume from Arabia. It was a celebration of diversity, a visual representation of the idea that the empire was made up of many peoples, each contributing their own unique offerings. But let us not romanticize too much. The Persian Empire was still an empire, built on conquest and maintained by force. There were rebellions, and when they happened, they were crushed with terrible efficiency. The king had a personal bodyguard of 10,000 soldiers, called the Immortals, because if one of them fell, another immediately took his place, so the number never changed. They were armed with spears and bows, and they were trained from childhood to fight and die for the king. There were spies, too, known as the eyes and ears of the king, who traveled throughout the empire, reporting on the loyalty of governors and generals. It was a system that worked because it was both generous and merciless. If you obeyed, you could live well. If you did not, you would be eliminated without hesitation. And yet, for all its power, the Persian Empire is often overshadowed by its more famous neighbors. When we think of ancient Iran, we think of the Islamic Golden Age, of poets like Rumi and Hafez, of the great empire of the Safavids. But the Persian Empire of Cyrus and Darius is something older, something that feels almost like a myth. It existed at a time when the world was still young, when the great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia were already ancient, when Greece was still a collection of quarreling city-states, when Rome was just a small village on the Tiber River. It was the first true superpower, the first empire to span multiple continents, the first to develop a sophisticated bureaucracy that could administer such a vast territory. And yet, it fell. It fell to a young man from Macedonia named Alexander, who conquered Persia in a series of lightning campaigns, burned Persepolis to the ground, and ended the rule of the King of Kings. The Persian Empire vanished, swallowed by the Hellenistic world, and its memory faded. But it did not disappear entirely. The ideas of the Persians lived on. The Romans adopted their system of roads, their postal service, their administrative divisions. The Byzantine Empire continued their traditions of court ceremony and imperial grandeur. The Muslim caliphates, when they conquered the region centuries later, absorbed the Persian love of gardens, of poetry, of intricate bureaucracy. The Persian language, written in a script that was adapted from the Arabic alphabet, continued to be spoken, and it still is today in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Tajikistan. The spirit of the Persian Empire, its tolerance, its pragmatism, its sense of grandeur has never fully died. It has just been resting, waiting for someone to come along and remember it. And so, as you lie here in the quiet of your room, let us remember it together. Let us drift backward through time, 3,000 years, to a world that was both familiar and strange. A world where kings spoke to their subjects through letters carried by riders on horseback. A world where a farmer in Egypt and a merchant in India were both subjects of the same king. A world where the mountains of Iran held palaces that glittered with gold and precious stones. A world where the King of Kings sat on his throne, surrounded by his immortals, and watched the tribute of 100 nations flow into his treasury. It is a world that is easy to forget, but it is worth remembering. Because in remembering, we might understand something about ourselves. We might understand that power, when wielded with wisdom, can be a force for peace. And we might understand that even the greatest empires are fragile, that they can be destroyed in a single generation, that their memory can fade to a whisper, but that whisper can still be heard if we listen closely enough. Let us listen, then. Let us quiet our minds and let the story unfold. There is no hurry. We have all the time in the world. The Persian Empire is waiting, patient and vast, ready to tell its story once more. And we are ready to hear it. And so we are ready. Let us settle deeper into the quiet, into the soft hum of the night, and let the story carry us further. The Persian Empire, as we have said, was a place of roads and riders, of grain and gold, of kings and commoners. But to truly understand it, we must visit its heart, the place where the King of Kings held court, where the destiny of millions was decided with a single word. That place was Persepolis, but it was not the only capital. There was also Susa in the plains of Elam, where the palace of Darius rose from the earth like a dream of brick and enamel. And there was Ecbatana in the cool mountains of Media, where the royal family would retreat in the summer months. Each capital had its own character, its own climate, its own mood. The kings moved between them with the seasons, like birds following the warmth. Imagine now the palace at Susa in the spring. The city is a patchwork of clay and color, with walls painted in blues and yellows, with gardens that bloom with roses and jasmine. The palace itself is a wonder. Its great hall, called the Apadana, can hold thousands of guests. The columns are made of cedar from Lebanon, brought overland by teams of oxen. The bricks are glazed in brilliant turquoise, and the floors are covered with carpets from the eastern provinces. In the throne room, the king sits on a golden throne, raised high above the floor with his feet resting on a footstool of silver. Around him stand his guards, the immortals, their faces hidden behind their helmets, their spears held at attention. They do not move. They do not blink. They are like statues carved from stone and will. The king, let us say it is Darius himself, receives a delegation from India. They have brought gifts, a pair of peacocks, their feathers iridescent in the light, and a chest of pearls the size of grapes. The Indian ambassador prostrates himself before the throne, touching his forehead to the floor. The king gestures for him to rise. He speaks through an interpreter, a man who has learned the languages of the empire. The king asks about the provinces, about the roads and the harvests. He listens carefully. He does not interrupt. His face is calm, but his eyes are sharp, watching everything. He is not a young man anymore. His beard is streaked with gray, and his hands, resting on the armrests of the throne, are lined with age. But his mind is still as quick as a hawk, and he misses nothing. After the audience, the king retires to his private chambers. There, away from the eyes of the court, he becomes a different man. He sits with his queen, Atossa, and they talk of their children, of the gardens, of the quiet things that fill a life when it is not consumed by power. Atossa is wise, and she often counsels him. She is the daughter of Cyrus the Great, the founder of the empire, and she carries his memory in her bones. She reminds Darius of the old ways, of the humility that comes from knowing that all power is borrowed, that it will one day be returned to the earth. Darius listens to her because he knows that a king who does not listen is a king who will not last. Let us now leave the palace and walk the streets of Susa. The city is a crossroads, a place where merchants and scholars and priests from every corner of the empire come together. There is a market, a covered bazaar where you can buy anything. Spices from the islands of the Indian Ocean, silks from China, wines from Greece, ivories from Africa. The air is thick with the smell of cumin and cinnamon, of roasting meat and fresh bread. The sound is a murmur, a constant hum of bargaining and laughter and argument. Here, a Zoroastrian priest in his white robe walks past a Babylonian astrologer reading the stars. Here, a Greek sculptor argues with a Persian noble about the proportions of a horse. The empire is alive in this market, 1,000 voices speaking 1,000 languages, but somehow understanding each other. And what of Zoroaster? We have not spoken of him yet. He was a prophet, a man who lived somewhere in the eastern lands of the empire, perhaps around 1000 BC, perhaps later. His teaching spread slowly at first, but by the time of Darius, they had become the official religion of the Persian kings. Zoroaster taught that there was one supreme God, Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord who was all-good and all-knowing. He taught that this God was opposed by an evil spirit, Angra Mainyu, and that the world was a battlefield between light and darkness, between truth and falsehood. Humans, he said, had the power to choose which side to support, and their choices would determine their fate in the afterlife. It was a stark, moralistic religion, but it also had a deep beauty. The Persians believed in a final judgment, a resurrection of the dead, and a paradise where the righteous would live forever in joy. These ideas, as we know, would later influence Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Persians did not force anyone to convert. They were remarkably tolerant, perhaps more than any empire before them. In Babylon, the Jews were allowed to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. In Egypt, the Persians honored the local gods and even paid for repairs to their sanctuaries. In Greece, they accepted the worship of Zeus and Athena, though they found the Greek habit of making their gods look like humans a little strange. For the Persians, the divine was beyond form, beyond image. They built no statues of Ahura Mazda. They worshipped him in open-air shrines, on mountain tops, in the fire that burned always in their temples. Fire was sacred, a symbol of the light that conquers darkness. And so, when you traveled through the Persian Empire, you would see fire temples everywhere, their flames flickering in the night, a constant reminder of the battle between good and evil. But let us not get lost in doctrine. Let us return to the earth, to the daily rhythm of life. Consider the farmers again, but now in a different season. It is autumn, the time of harvest. The wheat is golden, the dates are heavy on the palms, and the vineyards are full of purple grapes. The farmer and his family work from dawn to dusk, cutting the grain, pressing the grapes, storing the dates in clay jars. They are tired, but there is a satisfaction in the work, a sense of completion. At night they gather around a fire, eating bread and cheese and dried fruit, drinking wine cut with water. The stars are bright in the sky and the air is cool. They tell stories, old stories from the ancient days about heroes and kings and gods. They remember Cyrus, the one who freed them from the Babylonians, the one who said that all men are free to worship as they choose. They do not know much about the great events of the empire, about the wars in Greece or the rebellions in Egypt, but they know that the roads are safe, that the taxes are fair, that the king is far away and mostly invisible. For them, the empire is a blessing, not a burden. And what of the soldiers? They are a different breed. They come from all over the empire, recruited or conscripted into the king's army. They train in the art of war, learning to shoot the bow from horseback, to march in formation, to build siege engines. They are loyal to the king, but they are also loyal to their own families, their own villages. They dream of home, of the wife they left behind, of the child they have never seen. They write letters, dictated to scribes, and send them along the royal road. The letters take months to arrive, but when they do, they are read aloud by the village priest, and the whole family gathers to hear. The soldiers know that they may die in some distant land, that their bones may never return to the soil of their ancestors, but they do not dwell on this. They live in the present, in the campfire and the ration of bread, in the camaraderie of their fellow soldiers. The Persian army was large, but it was not invincible. As we mentioned, the Greeks defeated them at Marathon and Salamis. But these were setbacks, not the end. The empire continued, strong and stable, for another 100 years. It was only when Alexander of Macedon appeared, a young man with a vision of conquest, that the empire began to crumble. Alexander's campaign was swift and brutal. He crossed the Hellespont, defeated the Persian governors at the Granicus River, and then marched south. At the Battle of Issus, he faced Darius III, the last king of kings, and Darius fled, leaving his family behind. At the Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander broke the Persian army completely, and Darius fled again, this time to the east, where he was murdered by his own men. Alexander entered Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, and burned it to the ground. The fire consumed the palaces, the reliefs, the treasures. The great hall of 100 columns collapsed, and the smoke rose into the sky, a dark pillar that could be seen for miles. Why did Alexander burn it? Some say it was revenge for the Persian invasion of Greece a century and a half earlier. Some say he was drunk, and his companion, Thais, encouraged him to set the fire. Some say it was a calculated act of destruction, a message that the old world was gone, that a new era had begun. Whatever the reason, the fire marked the end of the Persian Empire. Alexander claimed the throne, married a Persian princess, and adopted many Persian customs, but the empire was no longer Persian. It was Hellenistic, a blend of Greek and Eastern cultures that would last for centuries, until the Romans and the Parthians and the Sasanians and the Arabs came, each in their turn. But the memory of the Persian Empire did not die. It lived on in the stories told by the Persians themselves in the epic of the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, written 1,000 years later by the poet Ferdowsi. In that book, the kings of old are remembered, their glories and their follies, their wisdom and their cruelty. Cyrus is there, and Darius, and the mythical kings of the distant past. The Shahnameh is a long poem, but it is also a history, a record of a people's soul. It reminds us that the Persian Empire, though forgotten by many, still echoes in the language, the art, the gardens of Iran. So as you lie here in the soft cocoon of your bed, let your thoughts drift to those ancient lands. Imagine the quiet of the Persian night, the stars reflected in the waters of the Tigris, the distant bark of a dog, the smell of jasmine and dust. Imagine the king in his palace, the farmer in his field, the merchant on the road, all of them connected by a web of roads and laws and dreams. They are gone now, every one of them, but their story is still here, waiting for you to remember it. And you have begun to remember. Let your breath slow, let your body sink deeper into the mattress. There is no need to hold onto anything. The story will be here when you return. And now let us rest. But perhaps you are not quite ready to sleep yet. There is still more to see in this ancient world, more corners of the empire to visit, more stories to hear. Let us return to Persepolis, not as it burned, but as it was in its glory. Imagine walking up the great staircase, the wide stone steps carved with reliefs of delegates from every corner of the empire. Each delegation brings a gift. The Medes bring fine horses and cloaks. The Babylonians bring silver bowls and lapis lazuli. The Indians bring gold dust and elephants. The Scythians bring their tall pointed caps and bows. The Ethiopians bring ivory and giraffes. The reliefs are not just decorations. They are a map of the empire, a reminder that the king rules over many lands and many peoples. The staircase is wide enough for 10 men to walk abreast, And as you climb, you can hear the murmur of voices, the clatter of hooves, the scent of incense and spices. The sun is warm on your shoulders, and the air is dry and clear. At the top of the staircase, you enter the Gate of All Nations, a massive hall with two great stone bulls guarding the entrance. You pass through and you are in the great courtyard. Ahead of you is the Apadana, the audience hall, a vast rectangular room with 72 columns, each one more than 60 feet tall. The columns are made of cedar from Lebanon, brought by the king's command. They are carved with palmettes and lotus flowers, with bulls and lions and griffins. The roof is made of cypress and ebony, and it is painted in bright colors, blues and reds and golds. The floor is covered with carpets and cushions. The king sits on a golden throne, raised high above the crowd. He wears a long robe of crimson and gold, and his beard is curled and perfumed. He holds a golden scepter in his right hand. Around him stand his bodyguards, the immortals, 10,000 of them, each one carrying a spear and a bow. They are called the immortals because when one falls, another takes his place immediately, so that the number never changes. Their uniforms are embroidered with gold, and their spear shafts are decorated with silver apples. The king receives ambassadors and dignitaries from all over the world. They bow low, touching their foreheads to the ground. The king speaks, and his words are translated by interpreters. He asks after their health, their families, their kingdoms. He offers them gifts and feasts. The banquets at Persepolis are legendary. They last for days, and the food is endless. Whole roasted oxen are brought in on platters. Peacocks and ostriches are stuffed with dates and almonds. River fish from the Tigris and the Euphrates are served with pomegranate seeds and mint. There is wine from Shiraz, sweet and dark. The guests recline on cushions, picking at the food with their hands. Musicians play harps and flutes and drums. Dancers from India and Greece perform. Storytellers recite the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is a scene of splendor and excess, but it is also a scene of order. Everything in Persepolis is designed to show the king's power, his wealth, his justice. But Persepolis was not the only city of the empire. There was Susa, the administrative capital, where the king spent much of the year. Susa was an old city, built by the Elamites long before the Persians came. It had a massive palace, built by Darius, with a great audience hall that could hold thousands. The walls of the palace were covered with glazed bricks, blue and gold and green, forming patterns of lions and winged bulls. The palace had a harem, a treasury, a garden. The garden was called a paradise, a word that comes from the old Persian paradisa, meaning a walled enclosure. These gardens were not just for beauty. They were a symbol of the king's power over nature. They had streams and fountains, trees and flowers from all over the empire. You could walk through a garden in Susa and see the same trees that grew in the mountains of Afghanistan or the plains of Mesopotamia. It was a microcosm of the empire, a living map. And then there was Babylon, the ancient city of the Mesopotamians, now part of the Persian Empire. The Persians loved Babylon. They admired its walls, its ziggurats, its hanging gardens. They allowed the Babylonians to worship their own gods, and they even participated in the New Year festival, where the king would enter the city and take the hand of the god Marduk, confirming his role as the protector of the city. For the Persians, this was not hypocrisy, it was wisdom. They understood that an empire must respect its subject peoples, that loyalty cannot be forced, only earned. And so the priests of Babylon, the nobles of Susa, the scribes of Persepolis, they all served the King of Kings because they all saw a benefit in his rule. But let us step away from the palaces and the feasts. Let us walk into a quiet village in the Zagros Mountains. It is spring, and the almond trees are in bloom. The air is full of the smell of damp earth and new grass. A woman is grinding barley in a stone mill, her hands moving in a steady rhythm. Her children are playing nearby, chasing a goat that has gotten loose. The village elder is sitting under a tree, mending a net. He is old and his hands are gnarled, but his eyes are sharp. He remembers the days before the Persians came, when the Medes ruled, and before them the Assyrians. He remembers the wars and the raids. Now there is peace, and he is grateful. He does not think much about the king in Persepolis. He knows that a tax collector comes once a year, and that the roads are safe, and that he can sell his wool in the market without fear of bandits. That is enough. The village has a small fire temple, a simple stone building with a single flame that burns night and day. The priest is a young man trained in the teachings of Zoroaster. He leads the villagers in prayers at dawn and dusk. He reminds them to be truthful, to be kind, to care for the earth. He tells them stories of the final judgment, of the bridge that leads to paradise, of the reward for the righteous. The villagers listen and they believe, but they also keep their old customs. They leave offerings at the village springs. They honor the spirits of their ancestors. They celebrate the solstices with feasts and bonfires. The empire is vast, but the village is small. Life is measured in seasons, in births and deaths, in the planting of barley and the shearing of sheep. And now, perhaps, you are drifting into a similar rhythm. Your breathing slows, your eyelids grow heavy. The world of the Persian Empire recedes like a distant melody. You are still here in your bed, warm and safe. But the story does not end. There is always more to remember. Think of the traders on the Silk Road, carrying silk from China and spices from India through the Persian lands. Think of the canals that irrigated the fields of Susiana, bringing water from the Karun River. Think of the physicians who studied in the academies of Gandhishapur, blending Greek and Indian and Persian knowledge. The empire was a civilization of connection, of exchange. It was not just a political entity, it was a world. And so, let the world fade. Let the images become soft and indistinct. The fire in the temple, the king on his throne, the farmer in his field, all of them are now part of the same quiet dream. You are floating above the empire, seeing it whole, from the mountains of Armenia to the deserts of Bactria. The cities are lights in the darkness. The roads are threads connecting them. The people are asleep, just as you are asleep. And in their sleep they dream of peace, of justice, of the light that conquers darkness. You are dreaming too. And your dream is gentle and kind and full of the soft rustle of ancient silk, the murmur of ancient rivers, the whisper of ancient winds. Rest now. The Persian Empire is still here in the pages of history, in the stones of Persepolis, in the dust of the royal road. It is waiting for you always. But tonight you do not need to visit it. Tonight you only need to sleep. Let the story carry you deeper, deeper, until there is no story at all, only the quiet rhythm of your own breath, the soft beating of your own heart, the calm and the silence and the night. But even the calmest night must give way to morning, and even the greatest empire must eventually fade. The Persian Empire, for all its splendor, was not eternal. The seeds of its decline were planted slowly, like the roots of a tree that grows too large for its soil. And yet its story does not end in ruin, but in transformation. The empire became a memory, a legend, a foundation upon which later worlds would build. You might wonder how such a vast and well-ordered empire could fall. The answer is not simple, but it begins with a new power rising in the West. The Greek city-states, small and quarrelsome, had long been a thorn in the side of the Persian kings. They rebelled, they resisted, and they refused to bow. The King of Kings, Darius the Great, sent his armies to punish them. He built a bridge of boats across the Bosporus, a marvel of engineering, and marched into Europe. But at Marathon, in a narrow plain by the sea, the Athenian hoplites defeated his forces. It was a small battle, but it showed that the Persians were not invincible. His son, Xerxes, tried again. He raised the largest army the world had ever seen, a force that took 7 days and 7 nights to cross the bridge at the Hellespont. He cut a canal through the peninsula of Mount Athos so his ships could pass without storm. He burned Athens, but his navy was shattered at Salamis, and his army was broken at Plataea. The Greeks, united for a brief moment, had pushed back the tide. And yet the empire did not collapse. It retreated, licked its wounds, and continued for another century. But the wounds never fully healed. The Greek cities, especially Athens, grew wealthy and powerful. They sent envoys to the Persian court, stirring rebellions in Egypt and elsewhere. The Persians learned to fight with gold as much as with soldiers. They hired Greek mercenaries, funded Greek cities against each other, and played a game of divide and conquer. It worked for a while, but it also weakened the empire from within. The satraps grew independent, the treasury grew thin, and the king, surrounded by intrigue, struggled to hold his throne. You can almost smell the dust and incense in the palace at Susa, where eunuchs and nobles whispered in the shadows. The court became a labyrinth of plots, of poisoning and betrayal. King Artaxerxes III massacred his own family to secure his rule, but even that could not stop the rot. The empire had become too large, too complex, too dependent on the loyalty of men who were not always loyal. And then, from the north, a new storm gathered. Alexander of Macedon was young, ambitious, and brilliant. He had been taught by Aristotle, and he dreamed of conquering the world. He crossed the Hellespont with an army of Macedonians and Greeks, and he never looked back. At the Granicus River, he defeated the Persian satraps. At Issus, he defeated Darius III in person. The king fled, leaving his family behind, and Alexander treated them with respect, a gesture that would echo through history. At Gaugamela, Darius fled again and the empire unraveled. Alexander took Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis burned. Whether it was revenge for the burning of Athens, or a drunken accident, or a calculated act of propaganda, the great palace of Darius and Xerxes went up in flames. The cedar columns, the gold and silver, the tapestries and carpets, all turned to ash and smoke. The fire was so bright that it could be seen for miles, a beacon of destruction. The empire that had been the center of the world for 2 centuries was no more. Alexander became the king of kings, and the Persian Empire became part of his vast dominion. But here is the gentle truth. Even in its fall, the empire did not entirely disappear. Alexander adopted Persian customs. He married a Persian princess. He kept the satraps in place, the postal system running, the roads open. He learned from the Persians, just as the Persians had learned from the Babylonians and the Medes. The empire's bones became the skeleton of a new world. And when Alexander died young, his generals fought over the remains, and the Seleucid Empire rose in the east, blending Greek and Persian traditions. The language of administration remained Aramaic, the roads remained safe, the gardens remained beautiful. Centuries later, the Parthians and the Sasanians would claim the legacy of the Achaemenids. They would rebuild the fire temples, restore the titles, and dream of a renewed Persian empire. The memory of Persepolis, even in ruins, inspired awe. Travelers from Rome and China came to see the columns, to touch the carvings, to wonder at what had been. And even today, if you visit the site, you can stand among the broken pillars and hear the wind whisper through the stone. It is a sound like the breath of history, soft and old. And now, let us return to the quiet village in the Zagros Mountains. The empire has fallen, but the village remains. The almond trees still bloom in spring, the barley is still ground in the mill, the children still chase the goat. The tax collector no longer comes, but the roads are not so safe. The old ways endure, though the young men dream of glory, of adventure, of cities they have heard about in stories. The fire temple still burns, but the priest now speaks of distant kings, of Alexander and his heirs, of the ebb and flow of power. The people of the village do not mourn the empire. They remember the peace, but they also remember the burdens. They know that empires rise and fall, but the land remains. The mountains remain. The rivers remain. And so does the human spirit, enduring through change, adapting, surviving. The Persian Empire was one of the great dreams of order, a vision of unity that spanned continents. But it was also a dream that could not last forever. All dreams end, but they also leave traces. You may find traces of Persia in your own life if you look. A word like paradise, or the game of polo, or the way we use the word magic. The Persians called their priests magi, and from that word we get magic. They called their gardens paradisa, and from that we get paradise. They invented the postal system, the concept of human rights on the Cyrus cylinder, the idea of a universal empire that respects local customs. They were not perfect, of course. They had slavery, they had wars, they had all the flaws of any civilization. But they also had a vision, a dream of a world united under a single king, a king who was just, who was wise, who was the King of Kings. And that dream, even in its imperfection, was beautiful. It is beautiful now, as you lie here in the dark, listening to the murmur of my voice. The empire is gone, but its beauty remains, like a faint melody that you cannot quite remember, but that you almost hear. Let that melody carry you deeper. Let the words become soft, like the rustle of silk, like the trickle of water in a paradise garden. You are safe, you are warm, and the story is gently fading. Think of the royal road stretching from Sardis to Susa, a distance of over 1,600 miles. Imagine a rider carrying a message galloping through the night. He changes horses at each station and he never stops. The message is urgent, perhaps a warning, perhaps a decree. He passes through villages and fields, through mountains and plains. The road is well kept, the bridges are sound, the guards at each post are alert. The rider is part of a system that connects the empire, that makes it one. He is a thread in the fabric of the state. And as he rides, he passes by people who are sleeping just as you are sleeping now. They do not know his name, but they depend on his speed. The empire works because of such riders, such roads, such quiet dedication. And now let us drift even further. Think of a scribe in the treasury at Persepolis, scratching cuneiform on a clay tablet. He records the grain, the cattle, the taxes. His work is tedious, but it is essential. Without him, the empire would be chaos. He sits cross-legged on a cushion, his stylus in his hand, his lamp burning low. The night is cold and he wraps his cloak tighter. He thinks of his wife and children waiting for him at home. He finishes the tablet, stamps it with the king's seal and places it on a shelf. Tomorrow, another scribe will take it and copy it. The archives of Persepolis are vast, holding the memory of the empire. They will survive the fire, buried in the rubble, to be discovered by archaeologists centuries later. The scribe cannot know this, but his work is eternal. And you, too, are part of a story that is eternal. You are a listener, a dreamer, a traveler through time. The empire of the Persians is not your empire, but its echoes are all around you. The words you speak, the roads you travel, the gardens you admire, all carry traces of that ancient world. And tonight, you are woven into that fabric as you rest, as you breathe, as you let go. Let your mind drift now, like a leaf on a slow river. The river is the history of the world, and you are floating on its surface, moving gently downstream. You pass by Persepolis, by Susa, by Babylon. You see the palaces and the gardens, the markets and the farms. You see the king on his throne, the scribe at his tablet, the rider on his horse. They are all part of the same river, the same flow. And you are part of it too, just for this moment, just for this night. The river is wide and deep, and it carries you toward a horizon that you cannot see. But you do not need to see it. You only need to float. The water is warm, the current is steady, and the stars above are countless and quiet. Let them be your guides. Let the story dissolve into the night, into the silence, into the peace that is always there waiting for you. Rest now. The Persian Empire is far away in time and in space, but its spirit lingers in the kindness of a garden, in the order of a road, in the memory of a king who dreamed of a just world. And that spirit, like a gentle hand, is reaching out to you, to soothe you, to comfort you, to carry you into sleep. Sleep then and dream of ancient rivers, of golden thrones, of quiet villages under a crescent moon. Dream of the dust of the royal road, the scent of cypress and rose, the sound of a distant flute. Dream of all that was and all that remains and all that will never be forgotten. For the empire of the Persians may be forgotten by many, but tonight it is remembered. And in that remembering it lives again. And now let the remembering fade. Let the images grow soft like charcoal sketches smudged by a gentle hand. The colors blur, the sounds dim, the world recedes. You are left with only your breath, only your heartbeat, only the warmth of your blanket. The story is over, but you are not alone. The night is with you, and the night is kind. So close your eyes if they are not already closed. Let your body sink into the mattress as if into a cloud. Let your thoughts become light, like dandelion seeds floating on the air. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to remember. The Persian Empire is gone, but you are here, and here is enough. Good night, then. Sleep well and let the empire rest with you. Good night, then. Sleep well and let the empire rest with you. And yet the story does not truly end. The empire may be gone, but its echoes continue to ripple through time, like the stone circles that form when you drop a pebble into still water. So let us drift now, not forward in history but sideways, into the quiet corners of Persian life that we have not yet visited. Let us walk through a garden, not the grand gardens of Pasargadae or the hanging gardens of Babylon, but a simple garden behind a house in the countryside of Fars. The air is cool, and the sound of a gentle stream is the only music. The gardener, an old man named Darius, not the king, just a man with the same name, tends his vines. He trims the grape leaves and whispers to the olive trees as if they are old friends. He does not know that he is part of a tradition that will inspire poets and philosophers for centuries. He only knows that the sun is warm on his back and that the soil feels good in his hands. This garden is a paradise, not the paradise of the afterlife, but a paradise of the present moment. The Persians believed that a garden was a reflection of heaven, a place where the soul could rest and be refreshed. And so, as you lie here, imagine the scent of ripe figs and the soft buzz of bees. The gardener sits on a stone bench and closes his eyes. He is not thinking of the empire or the taxes or the distant wars. He is just listening to the water, feeling the breeze and being still. That stillness is a gift he has given himself, and now it is a gift he offers to you across the centuries. Let that stillness settle around you like a blanket. Let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of the garden, the rise and fall of the stream, the flutter of leaves, the distant call of a dove. The gardener does not need anything. He has enough. And in this moment, so do you. Now let us move from the garden to the workshop of a potter in Susa. The potter sits at his wheel, his hands coated in fine red clay. He shapes a bowl, spinning it with his foot, coaxing the clay upward. He has made thousands of bowls like this, and yet each one is different. He thinks of the patterns he will paint on the rim, the spirals and dots that have been passed down from his father and his father's father before him. The patterns are old, older than the empire itself. They carry meanings that are almost forgotten, symbols of the sun and the moon, of the cycle of planting and harvest. As the potter works, he hums a tune that has no words, a melody that seems to come from the clay itself. The heat of the kiln glows orange in the corner of the room. The bowls, once fired, will be used for grain or water or wine. They will sit on tables in homes across the empire, holding the food that sustains families. They are humble objects, but they are also vessels of life. And you too are a vessel. You hold your own breath, your own heartbeat, your own dreams. The potter's hands shape the clay, but your own breath shapes your rest. Let the spinning of the wheel become a lullaby, round and round, slow and steady. The bowl is formed, and then it is set aside to dry. The potter wipes his hands on his apron and looks out the window. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the courtyard. He is tired, but it is a good tired, the kind that comes from honest work. He will eat a simple meal of bread and cheese, drink a cup of wine, and then sleep. Tomorrow he will make more bowls, and the day after that. The empire may rise and fall, but the potter's wheel never stops turning. Think of the weavers in the city of Hamadan, working on looms that click and clack like soft rain. They weave carpets of wool and silk, threads dyed with madder root and indigo, with cochineal and saffron. The patterns are intricate, full of flowers and birds and geometric shapes. Each carpet tells a story, a memory of a tribe or a family. A mother weaves a carpet for her daughter's wedding, incorporating symbols of fertility and protection. A merchant orders a carpet for his shop, one that will impress his customers. A king commissions a carpet for his palace, so large that it covers an entire hall, woven with precious stones and gold thread. The weavers do not think of kings as they work. They think of the rhythm of the loom, the pull of the threads, the satisfaction of seeing the pattern emerge. Their fingers are nimble, their eyes sharp. They work by lamplight, and the only sound is the click-clack, like a heartbeat. Let that rhythm become your own. Feel your own heart beating in time with the loom, steady and sure. The carpet grows inch by inch, day by day. It takes months, sometimes years, to finish. But the weavers are patient. They know that beauty cannot be rushed. And so you too can be patient. Sleep cannot be rushed. It comes in its own time, like the completion of a carpet. You are the weaver of your own rest, and each breath is a thread. Each exhale is a knot that ties the thread in place. Soon, the pattern will be complete, and you will be wrapped in the warmth of deep sleep. Now, let us travel to a different part of the Persian world, to the temples of the Magi. The priests of Zoroaster, the ancient religion of Persia, tended sacred fires that were kept burning for centuries. They did not worship the fire itself, but saw it as a symbol of truth and purity, of the light that dispels darkness. The fire temples were simple structures, often with a dome and an altar at the center. The Magi would chant prayers in the ancient language of Avestan, words that were believed to carry divine power. They would add sandalwood and frankincense to the flames, and the smoke would rise like a prayer. The people came to the temple to seek guidance, to offer thanks, or simply to sit in the presence of the light. Imagine sitting in such a temple on a stone floor with the fire flickering before you. The room is quiet except for the soft crackle of the flames and the murmur of the priest. You are not required to pray. You are only required to be present. The fire warms your face, and the shadows dance on the walls. You feel a sense of peace, a connection to something older than yourself. The Magi believe that each person has a divine spark, a piece of the eternal light, and that the fire in the temple helps them remember that spark. Tonight, that spark is inside you, glowing softly, waiting for you to recognize it. Let the fire be your guide. It does not demand anything. It only offers warmth and light. The flames rise and fall like your breath. They are never still, but they are always beautiful. You can watch them forever, and yet you do not need to watch. You can close your eyes, and the memory of the fire will remain, a golden glow behind your eyelids. That glow is your own inner light, the light that carries you through the night. And now let us move to a library. Not a grand library like Alexandria, but a small private library in a scholar's home in Ctesiphon. The scholar is a man named Anushirvan, and he has spent his life collecting scrolls and codices from all over the known world. He knows Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, Persian history, and Syrian medicine. His library is his sanctuary, a place where the noise of the world fades away. He sits at his desk, a scroll unrolled before him, and he reads by the light of a single oil lamp. The words are in Pahlavi, the language of the Sasanian era, but the ideas are as old as humanity. He is studying the teachings of Zoroaster, trying to understand the nature of the soul and the journey it takes after death. The scholar is not anxious. He knows he will not find all the answers, and that is all right. The joy is in the searching, in the quiet companionship of books. He pauses to sip a cup of mint tea. The mint is from his garden, dried and crushed, and the taste is fresh and calming. He sets down the cup and continues reading. Outside, the night is deep and still. The stars are out and the crescent moon hangs low. The scholar feels a profound gratitude for this moment, for the chance to sit and learn and think. He knows that his work will be forgotten by most, but that some other scholar in some other century might discover his notes and build upon them. That is enough. You too are a scholar of sleep. You are learning the art of letting go, of trusting the darkness, of finding comfort in the unknown. Each night you practice. Each night you become a little more skilled. And each night, the knowledge you gain is not stored in scrolls but in your own body, in the way your muscles relax, in the way your breath deepens, in the way your mind surrenders. You are the library of your own rest, and every dream is a manuscript waiting to be written. Now let us return to the road. Not the royal road, but a smaller road, a path through the mountains that connects two villages. It is a road traveled by merchants, herders, and pilgrims. There is a shop at the side of the road, a simple structure of mud brick, where a woman sells bread and honey. She bakes the bread in a clay oven, and the smell wafts across the valley. Travelers stop to buy a loaf, to rest in the shade, to share news. The woman knows everyone who passes, and she remembers their stories. She hears of a wedding in the next village, of a dispute over a water well, of a caravan that was attacked by bandits. She listens and nods and offers a kind word. Her life is small, but it is full of connections. She is a thread in the fabric of the community. As you listen to the story of this woman, you are also a traveler on a road. The road is the path of your own sleep, winding through valleys of memory and mountain passes of thought. You stop at this rest stop, this moment of calm, and you take a deep breath. The bread is warm, the honey is sweet. You are refreshed. And then you continue, moving deeper into the night, deeper into the soft embrace of unconsciousness. The Persian Empire was vast, but its greatest legacy is not in its conquests or its monuments. It is in these small moments, these ordinary lives, these quiet acts of kindness and perseverance. The potter, the weaver, the gardener, the scholar, the baker, they are the ones who truly built the empire, not the kings and generals. They lived, they loved, they worked, they slept. And they passed on their traditions, their songs, their recipes, their stories. You are part of that chain now. You are the listener and you are the keeper of the memory. So let the memory fade, but let the peace remain. The fire in the temple still burns, the wheel still turns, the loom still clicks. And you are still here, safe in the dark, with nothing to do but rest. The Persian Empire has become a whisper, a gentle murmur in the background. Let it be the soundtrack to your sleep, the soft hum of history carrying you away. Good night again and again, as many times as it takes. The night is patient, the story is endless, and you are the dreamer forever drifting, forever held. Now think of the color purple. The Persians prized the dye made from murex shells, a deep royal purple that was reserved for the king and his court. Imagine a bolt of that cloth folded in a chest in a palace in Ecbatana. The color is so rich it seems to glow, even in the dim light of the treasury. The cloth has never been worn. It was a gift from a Phoenician merchant, a tribute to the King of Kings. It sits undisturbed, waiting for a ceremony that may never come. The palace is quiet, the guards are but shadows. The cloth is patient, it has all the time in the world. And you too are wrapped in a kind of purple, the soft, dark purple of the night sky just before dawn. You are the cloth folded in the chest of sleep, waiting for the morning to unfold you. But the morning is far away. The night is still young. The purple is deep and soothing. Let it envelop you, let it become the color of your dreams. One last image. A child in Persepolis, a little girl named Roxana who lives in a house near the terrace. She has never seen the king, but she knows his name. She plays with her dolls in the courtyard, under the watchful eye of her grandmother. The grandmother is old, with silver hair and kind eyes. She tells Roxana stories of the gods, of heroes and monsters, of the great king who built the palace on the hill. Roxana listens, wide-eyed, as the sun sets and the shadows grow long. Then the grandmother says, "Time for sleep." She takes Roxana by the hand and leads her to a small bed. She tucks her in, kisses her forehead, and hums a lullaby. Roxana closes her eyes and the world of the empire vanishes. She is only a child, safe and loved. And you are that child tonight. The world of the empire is far away. You are safe, you are loved, you are wrapped in the care of an unseen hand. The lullaby is the voice of history, soft and old. Listen, it is singing to you. Let the song carry you home. Sleep. Let the empire rest with you. Sleep. Let the empire rest with you. And as you sink deeper into that rest, let us wander to a garden. Not a grand palace garden with fountains and peacocks, but a simple garden in a village on the edge of the Zagros Mountains. It is dawn, and the air is cool and damp. A man named Bijan is tending his apricot trees. He has been doing this for 40 years. He knows each tree by its shape, by the way the branches bend. He knows which trees need more water, which ones produce the sweetest fruit. He does not rush. He moves slowly, deliberately, his hands gentle on the bark. The soil is rich and dark beneath his feet. He picks a fallen twig and snaps it, listening to the sound. It is a small satisfaction, the sound of something breaking cleanly. He sets the twig aside and looks up at the sky. The clouds are low and gray, promising rain. Bijan nods. The orchard needs it. He breathes in the scent of wet earth and green leaves. There is no hurry. The day will unfold as it should. You are like Bijan in your sleep. You tend to your rest gently, patiently, day after day. Some nights the fruit is abundant and you wake refreshed. Other nights the rain is slow to come and you toss and turn. But you return to the garden each evening, trusting that the cycle will continue. The orchard of your sleep is ancient, rooted in the same soil that fed the Persians. And tonight the rain is falling softly. You can hear it on the roof, a steady, gentle rhythm. It is the sound of 1,000 years of quiet nights. Now think of a camel caravan moving across the Dashti Kavir, the Great Salt Desert. The sun is high, but the caravan has stopped for the midday rest. The camels kneel, grumbling softly. The drivers spread cloths on the sand and sit cross-legged, sharing dried dates and flatbread. One of the men, an old trader named Karim, brings out a small clay flute. He begins to play a simple melody, a tune he learned from his father. The notes rise thin and clear over the desert, carried by the hot wind. The other men fall silent, listening. The melody is sad but not heavy. It speaks of longing, of distance, of the beauty of the open road. Karim plays until the tune fades, then he puts the flute away. The men rest a while longer, their eyes half closed, their bodies still. Then they rise and the caravan moves on. The desert stretches out, endless and silent. The only sound is the soft padding of feet on sand and the creak of saddles. It is a rhythm as old as time. In your sleep, you are a member of that caravan. You have traveled a long way and you have earned this rest. The desert of the day is behind you. The night camp is ahead. You can already see the faint glow of the fire, the silhouette of tents. You can smell the incense and the bread. The journey is almost over. All that remains is to lie down and let the sand of sleep cover you, warm and soft. Let us return to Persepolis, but not to the palace. Let us go to the kitchens. It is late evening, and the cooks are preparing a meal for the palace staff, not the king. The head cook is a woman named Farzine. She is old, with flour in her hair and a laugh that fills the room. She directs her assistants with calm efficiency. On the fire, a pot of lamb stew simmers with dried limes and turmeric. The aroma is rich and comforting. Farzaneh tastes the broth with a wooden spoon, closes her eyes, and nods. It is perfect. She adds a pinch of salt, even though she knows it is not needed. Old habit. She moves to the bread ovens where the flatbreads puff up and brown. She pulls one out, tears a piece, and eats it while it is still hot. The bread is soft and chewy. She feels a deep contentment. She has done this work for decades, and it never grows tiresome. There is a rightness to it, a rhythm that matches the turn of the earth. You too have your own rhythm. Your breath is the bread rising, your heartbeat is the ladle stirring. You are the cook of your own rest, preparing the meal of sleep with care and patience. And tonight the stew is done. The table is set. All you have to do is sit down and eat, or rather, lie down and drift. The flavors of the day have been simmered down to a single warm taste, peace. Now imagine a scribe in the city of Susa. His name is Hormizd, and he is copying a document, a tax record, nothing exciting. But he takes pride in his penmanship. Each character is formed with care. He uses a reed pen dipped in ink made from lamp black and gum Arabic. The ink is shiny on the papyrus. He works by the light of a window, the morning sun casting a soft rectangle on his desk. He has been at this since dawn, and his hand is steady. He is thinking about the content of the record, the taxes paid by a small village in the province of Media. The numbers are not large, but they represent the labor of farmers, the produce of fields, the work of families. Hormizd feels a quiet respect for those distant villagers. They do not know his name, but he is preserving a small piece of their story. He dips his pen again. The parchment absorbs the ink. The words are permanent now. Hormizd stretches, rolls his shoulders, and continues. In your sleep, you are also a scribe, but you are writing a different kind of record. You are inscribing the memories of the day into the soft clay of your mind. Each dream is a character, each thought a stroke. And as you drift, you are not worried about accuracy. It is a freehand sketch, loose and forgiving. Some images will fade by morning. Some will remain. But the act of writing is itself restful. The pen moves, the ink flows, and you are carried along. Now consider the Zoroastrian concept of Chinvat bridge, the bridge of judgment that the soul must cross after death. It is said to be wide for the righteous and narrow as a blade for the wicked. But do not worry. You are not crossing that bridge tonight. Tonight you are simply lying on a soft bed in a quiet room. The bridge is a story, a metaphor. And in your sleep, all bridges become soft, wide paths. The crossing is gentle. There is no judgment, only a slow, sweet surrender. Think of a young woman named Shirin who lives in the city of Ray. She is a weaver of silk, and she works in a workshop full of looms. The sound of the shuttles is a constant chatter like birds. Shirin is working on a scarf of deep indigo, a color she loves. She has been adding threads of silver, and the fabric catches the light. She is thinking of the person who will wear this scarf, a merchant's wife, perhaps, or a dancer. She imagines them wrapping it around their shoulders, feeling the smooth texture. She smiles. Her work is a a connection across time. She does not know you, but she weaves for you, for anyone who will appreciate the beauty. And tonight, as you lie in the dark, you are wrapped in an invisible scarf of calm, woven from the stories of such weavers, such lives. The Persian Empire was a network of such connections. A farmer in one valley, a weaver in another, a scribe in a third. They never met, but they were bound together by the empire's systems of trade, governance, and shared belief. And you are now part of that network by the simple act of listening. You are at the end of a long line of storytellers and listeners, stretching back to the time of Cyrus. And the line continues forward through you into the future. But the future can wait. The present moment is enough. The present moment is this: the warmth of the covers, the slow rhythm of your breath, the soft voice of history whispering in your ear. Let me tell you about the gardens of Pasargadae. They were designed by Cyrus the Great himself, with irrigation channels that ran straight and true. The garden was a paradise. The word itself comes from the old Persian paradisa, meaning walled enclosure. In that garden, Cyrus walked among cypress trees and pomegranate bushes. He paused at a fountain and watched the water splash over stone. The water was clear and cold. He dipped his hand in and felt the chill. He was the master of an empire, but in that moment he was just a man enjoying a garden. The empire could wait. The roses did not require his attention. The birds sang without his permission, and he was glad. In your own garden, the garden of sleep, you do not need to be king. You do not need to command anything. The flowers of your dreams will open in their own time. The paths of your rest are already laid. All you have to do is wander slowly, aimlessly. The walls of the garden are soft and high, keeping the world out. Inside, it is safe and green and quiet. Now think of a city at night, Babylon under Persian rule. The streets are empty. The great Ishtar gate is closed, its blue-glazed bricks gleaming faintly in the moonlight. A cat walks along the top of the wall, silent and graceful. It pauses, looks down at the street below, then continues its patrol. In a house near the gate, a family sleeps. The parents in one room, the children in another. A baby stirs, then settles. In the courtyard, a fountain trickles. The sound is constant, soothing. The water recirculates, falling and rising, never stopping. It is the same fountain that has run for 100 years. The stones are worn smooth by its endless flow. That fountain is like your breath tonight, steady and unchanging. Let it be your anchor. We have traveled far tonight, from the deserts to the palaces, from the kitchens to the gardens. But the journey is not about distance. It is about depth. Each story is a layer, and we are sinking through them, like water filtering through sand. The layers get finer, softer, until we reach the deepest place, where everything is still and silent. That is the place of sleep, and you have almost arrived. So let the empire go. The kings are shadows, the battles are whispers, the cities are dust. What remains is the simple act of closing your eyes. The flame of the fire temple is in your heart. The loom of the weaver is in your dreams. The flute of the desert is in your ears. And the voice of the storyteller is fading, becoming a hum, becoming a breath, becoming nothing. Rest now. Let the Persian Empire be your pillow. Let the centuries be your blanket. Let the stars above Persepolis be the same stars that watch over you tonight. They are ancient and indifferent, but they are beautiful. And beauty is enough. It is always enough. Good night once more. Sleep well, traveler. Sleep well, child. Sleep well, empire. But the night is long and the empire is patient. Even after a good night, there is always more to tell. The stars above Persepolis have not finished their watch, and you are still here, warm and safe. So let us drift a little further into the quiet corners of history that even the historians sometimes forget. There is a story about a Persian queen named Artistone. She was one of the wives of Darius the Great, and she had a reputation for being fiercely independent. She owned her own estates in the province of Fars, managed her own finances, and even corresponded directly with the king when she needed something. One letter survives, in which she asks Darius to send her a specific type of wool from his royal flocks, because the local wool was too coarse for her liking. And Darius, the king of kings, the ruler of millions, wrote back in his own hand, or at least dictated a reply, saying that he would send the wool. He added a postscript asking if she needed anything else. Imagine that. A queen sitting in her palace in Susa or perhaps in her country estate, writing a letter about wool. The weight of empire rested on her shoulders too, but in that moment it was a simple request. And the king, busy with satraps and battles and building projects, paused to answer. It is a small thing, but it is a human thing. And that is what we are after tonight, the human thing. Think of Artistone now. She is not a legend. She is a woman who enjoyed soft fabrics. She likely had a favorite shawl, perhaps dyed with Tyrian purple, the color of royalty. She wrapped it around her shoulders on chilly evenings, and the weight of it was comforting. She may have had a cat that curled up in her lap while she read scrolls. The cat purred and she stroked its fur. The fire crackled. The wool was soft. And for a little while the empire was just a room, warm and quiet. That is the same thing that happens to you tonight. The empire of your day, the tasks, the worries, the noise fades into the background. All that remains is the room, the covers, the soft breath. You are Artistone, wrapped in royal wool. You are the queen of your own small kingdom of sleep. But let us go further east to the city of Merv in the province of Margiana. Merv was a trading hub, a stop on the Silk Road, even before the Silk Road had a name. The caravans came from China and India, bringing spices and silks and ideas. They also brought stories. The merchants would gather in the caravanserai, a kind of inn with a large central courtyard. They would sit on carpets spread over the stone floor, drink tea, and trade tales. One of the tales they told was about a bird called the Simurgh, a giant mythical creature that was said to be so old it had seen the world destroyed and rebuilt 3 times. The Simurgh was wise and kind, and it would sometimes help lost travelers find their way. The merchants would tell this story to entertain the children of the innkeeper, who sat cross-legged and listened with wide eyes. The firelight flickered on their faces. The tea was sweet. The night was cold outside, but inside the caravanserai it was warm with stories. Tonight, you are one of those children. You are sitting on a soft carpet, wrapped in a blanket, and the story is being told just for you. The Simurgh is not a hunting monster, not something to fear. It is a presence, old and gentle like the idea of sleep itself. It has seen many nights, many empires, many journeys. It knows that you are tired. It knows that you need to rest. And it spreads its great wings over you, blocking out the world, letting you settle into the soft feathers of darkness. The Simurgh is not real, but the comfort of the story is real. And that is enough. Now consider the Persian fascination with the number 7. The Zoroastrians honored the 7 Amshaspentas, the holy immortals who served Ahura Mazda. The Persians built palaces with 7 levels like the one in Ecbatana, each level painted a different color: white, black, red, blue, orange, silver, and gold. It was a stairway to heaven, a reminder of the cosmic order. 7 is also the number of days in the week. And tonight we are in the 7th day, the day of rest. Your body knows this. Your mind knows this. The 7 colors blend into one soft gray, the color of sleep. The stairway leads upward, but you are walking downward into the deep, comfortable basement of rest. Each step is a breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have arrived. There is a story about a Persian soldier named Bagadates who served in the garrison at Persepolis. He was not a general, not a noble. He was a common soldier, one of the thousands who guarded the grand palace. His job was to stand watch at a minor gate, one that led to the kitchens. He would stand there for hours, leaning on his spear, watching the cooks and servants come and go. He grew to know them by sight. He knew the baker's wife, the boy who carried water, the old man who sharpened knives. He heard their gossip, their laughter, their occasional arguments. He was part of their world, even though he was just a guard. One day the baker gave him a small roll of bread, still warm. Bagadates ate it while on duty, hiding it behind his hand. It was a small kindness. Years later, when Alexander's army came and the palace fell, Bagadates escaped with his life. He fled to a village and became a farmer. But he always remembered the warm bread and the face of the baker. That memory was worth more than any treasure. You also have such memories. The smell of bread baking in your own childhood kitchen. The sound of a parent's voice reading a bedtime story. The feeling of a hand stroking your hair. These are the small treasures that no empire can take. They are stored in the quiet vault of your mind. And tonight, as you fall asleep, you are free to open that vault and let the warmth spill out. The soldier Bagadates stands guard over your dream, not with a spear, but with a gentle reminder that kindness survives. The baker's bread is still warm. The memory is still alive. Now let us return to the idea of the Varana, the divine glory that was believed to shine on the kings of Persia. It was a light, like a halo, that marked them as chosen by the gods. But the Varana was not exclusive to kings. It could also rest on ordinary people who performed acts of great good. A farmer who shared his harvest, a mother who raised her children with love, a scribe who wrote honestly. They too carried a faint glow. And tonight, you are carrying your own Varana. It is not a bright, demanding light. It is a soft, warm glow like the embers of a fire that has burned low. It is the light of your own goodness, accumulated over a lifetime of small generosities. Let it shine gently now. There is no need to prove anything. The light is for you alone, to guide you into the darkness of sleep. Imagine the great ceremonial hall of Persepolis, the Apadana. It was built to receive delegations from all the satrapies, and its walls were lined with reliefs of the subject peoples bringing tribute. The reliefs show men from India, Ethiopia, Ionia, and beyond, each in their native dress carrying gifts: gold, silver, horses, camels, ivory, cloth. The carvings are incredibly detailed, and you can see the folds of their robes, the expressions on their faces, the way they hold their hands. Some look proud, some look tired, some look bored. They are not just symbols, they are individuals captured in stone. They have been looking at each other for 2,500 years. They never move. They never blink. They are the eternal audience of the empire. Tonight, you are part of that audience. You are walking slowly up the grand staircase of the Apadana, but in your dream, the stairs are soft and cushioned. The reliefs come to life, but gently. A man from Bactria offers you a cup of cool water. A woman from Lydia plays a lullaby on a lyre. A boy from Gandhara hands you a flower. They are not demanding tribute from you. They are giving you gifts of peace. Accept them. Let the water soothe your throat, the music enter your ears, the flower rest on your pillow. The Apadana of your dream is a place of reception, and you are receiving sleep. Now think of the Persian postal system, the Angarium. It was a relay of riders who carried messages across the empire, changing horses at stages every 14 miles. They traveled day and night in all weather, carrying royal decrees and official correspondence. The riders were known for their speed and reliability. Legend says that nothing could stop them, not snow, not rain, not heat, not the dark of night. They carried the words of the king from one end of the empire to the other. And tonight, you are like a rider, but you are carrying a different message. You are carrying the message of rest from your mind to your body. The relay stations are your breaths. Each exhale is a change of horses. Each inhale is a fresh start. And the journey is short from here to the destination of sleep. The road is clear. The night is cool. You can hear the hoofbeats of your own heart slowing down. Let the Angarium carry you. Let the riders be your thoughts fading into the distance. The last message is simple: rest. The king has spoken, the empire is secure, you can stand down, and so we come to the end of our journey. We have wandered through the gardens of Pasargadae, the kitchens of Susa, the looms of Re, the streets of Babylon. We have met queens and soldiers, scribes and weavers, cooks and guards. We have seen the fire temples and the royal roads. We have heard the stories of the Simurg and the Chinvat Bridge. And now all that remains is the quiet. The empire has folded itself into the night like a great tapestry being gently rolled up. The threads of history are still there, but they are not pulling anywhere. They are simply resting. You too are a thread in that tapestry. You are not forgotten. You are woven in. And the weaving is done for tonight. The loom is still. The shuttle is silent. The weaver has closed her eyes. The indigo scarf is finished. The bread is baked, the letter is sealed. The garden is dark and cool. The fountain babbles softly. The cat walks along the wall. And the king, the great king, lies down in his chamber and breathes deeply. He is just a man after all. And you are just a person curled in your bed. And that is enough. That is everything. Sleep well, traveler. Sleep well in the arms of the ancient world. Sleep well, empire. Sleep well, dreamer. The night is yours and it is good. But before you drift off completely, let us linger just a moment longer in the quiet of the ancient world. For there is one more thing the Persians understood deeply, and that is the nature of time itself. They did not see time as a line that marches ever forward, crushing the past beneath its feet. No, they saw time as a great circle, like the turning of the seasons, like the daily journey of the sun. The past was not gone. It was simply folded into the present like a bed sheet tucked neatly at the corners. And the future was already there, waiting in the shadows, patient as a cat. So when we speak of the Persian Empire as a forgotten superpower, we must remember that forgetting is not the end. It is just a kind of sleep. And like sleep, it holds the promise of waking. Consider the Zoroastrian calendar, which divided the year into 12 months of 30 days each, with 5 extra days added at the end to align with the solar cycle. These 5 days were called the Gata days, named after the hymns of Zoroaster. They were considered a time between times, a liminal space where the old year and the new year overlapped, where the veil between the living and the dead grew thin. During these days, people would honor the souls of their ancestors, leaving out food and drink for them, speaking their names softly in the dark. It was a time of remembrance and release. And tonight, as you lie in bed, you are in your own Gata days. The day that is ending and the night that is beginning, they overlap in your consciousness. The thoughts of the day fade into the dreams of the night. The people you have loved and lost are not far away. They are as close as your next breath. You can whisper their names if you wish. The air will carry them. The Persians also had a tradition of the royal dream interpreter. The king would often consult his dream interpreters before making important decisions. One such interpreter, a man named Artabanus, served Xerxes. He once told the king that dreams are like water. They take the shape of the vessel that holds them. If the king is anxious, his dreams will be turbulent. If the king is calm, his dreams will be still. And tonight you are the king of your own dream, but you do not have to interpret anything. You do not have to be anxious. Your vessel is soft and round and warm. The water inside is still. The dreams that come will be gentle, like the ripples of a stone dropped into a pond, but the stone has already sunk, and the ripples are smoothing out. There is a story about a Persian queen who could not sleep. She tossed and turned on her bed of silk and cedar. Her servants brought her warm milk with honey. Her musicians played soft lullabies. Her handmaidens fanned her with ostrich feathers, but nothing worked. Finally, an old wise woman came to her. She did not bring milk or music or feathers. She brought a single jar of earth. She said, "Your Majesty, this earth is from the garden where you played as a child. Bury your face in it. Breathe its scent." And the queen did. She remembered the damp soil, the smell of mint, the feel of grass under her knees. She remembered the simple joy of being a child with no crown and no worries, and she slept. Tonight, you do not need a jar of earth. You have your own memories, your own scent of home. It might be the smell of your pillow, the faint trace of laundry detergent, the warmth of a blanket. That is your garden. Breathe it in. Let the Queen's lesson be your guide. Now think of the Persian love for storytelling itself. The Persians were masters of the tale within a tale, the framed story. The most famous example is the 1001 Nights, which, though set in a later Persianate world, carries the spirit of the ancient storytellers. Scheherazade told stories to the king night after night, never finishing, always leaving him wanting more. She used the thread of narrative to delay her own death. But here in this podcast, we are doing the opposite. We are spinning a story to bring you sleep, not to keep you awake. We are unraveling the thread gently, letting it fall in loops around you. The tale is not a trap. It is a hammock. You can lie in it and let it hold you. The Persian Empire eventually fell, as all empires do. The memory of it faded, buried under the sands of time and the dust of conquests. But stories are different. They do not need armies or palaces. They need only a voice and a listener. And tonight, you are the listener. That makes you the keeper of the story. You are the new curator of the Persian dream. And as you sleep, the dream will grow. The gardens will bloom again, the fires will burn low. The king will smile, the weaver will hum, the soldier will eat his warm bread, the simurgh will land on your windowsill, and all of it will be safe in the quiet kingdom of your mind. So close your eyes now. The last ember has faded. The last word has been spoken. The last breath is soft and deep. The empire is not forgotten. It is not forgotten because you are remembering it here in this moment, and every moment that follows will be a variation of sleep. The Persian Empire is no longer a superpower of the ancient world. It is a superpower of the night, and you are its citizen, its king, its dreamer. Rest now. Rest well. The night is yours, and it is very, very good.